Joining us now to moderate this next panel is AFA's Executive Vice President, Major General Doug Raaberg.
Thank you, Tobias. I'd like to warmly welcome you to this morning's dynamic panel, Science, Technology, and Innovation in Every Domain. Perhaps the most important topic aligned to this year's theme, Accelerate and Innovate. Joining me are four leaders who drive science, technology, and innovation, and whose work is vital to assuring dominant air and space forces in every domain. Together, they represent the full spectrum of innovation, from establishing a creative mindset to deterring and defeating peer and near-peer threats from China and Russia. Each of us, of our panelists, is passionate about democratizing innovation, accelerating change, and giving commanders the decisive edge in air, space, and cyberspace. I am pleased to welcome General Arnie Bunch, Commander, Air Force Materiel Command. Lieutenant General J.T. Thompson, Commander, Space and Missile Systems Center. Brigadier General Heather Pringle, Commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory, and Dr. Joel Mozer, Chief Scientist, United States Space Force. Let's start off with a perspective on accelerating innovation. If each of you would give me your perspective on accelerating innovation to deliver new capabilities. General Bunch, let me hand it over to you.
Doug, thanks very much. It's an honor to be here with you today, and with this distinguished group and august group. It's a little bit scary knowing that I'm the lowest common denominator out of this group, but it's great to be here with them as we all talk about this critical thing for our Air Force, Air and Space Force. I see S&T and what we're talking about today is key to our future. We've got today we have the world's most dominant air and space force, and only through our continued efforts in S&T are we going to be able to retain that. And we have to change the way we do it. We are doing it because we do have to innovate and we do have to accelerate so that we're getting technology to the field more at speed of relevance that we have before. While I am talking about accelerate, there's one thing that we can't lose track of. We're not just focused on what we're doing now, we're also focused on that longer term. We've got to keep that basic research going. That's one area that I've told Heather as she's doing the S&T 2030 plan for us, which is one of our key initiatives, get after this. I don't want any reduction in 6-1 funding or basic research funding. We got to continue to focus in that area and not just caught up with what we're doing now or 5 years from now. What technologies and what research areas do we need to be focused on so we're looking 30 years out? So we are talking about accelerate change, but I don't want anybody to lose track of the Air Force Research Laboratory has got to be focused much longer term, and we've got to go at that. As I said, S&T 2030 is really big. I think there are a lot of innovative things we're really doing across the enterprise, and we'll hopefully get a chance to talk about some of those. One of the big ones that JT and I have talked about is we got to make sure there are no barriers between the Air Force and the Space Force as we move forward so that the technologies that are being developed don't run into a roadblock as they try to go there. We got to make sure we can freely flow those technologies over, even if they're developed in the Space Vehicles Directorate and I need them in the NC3 enterprise. I got to have a way to do that. If we're doing materials, we got to have an innovative way to get that over so JT can use it in spacecraft or from Rome with command and control or IT. There are just a lot of things we got to make sure we don't create barriers. That's one of the biggest things for this innovative space we've got to try to focus on. The other one I think that'll continue to help us here is we got to look at our most valuable resource, which is our workforce. We got to have some avenues to where if JT has the right person to do something, we can move them over to work for Heather for a while, or if we need to move someone from AFMC that's in a key acquisition role and worked on a technology, we can move them over so that we can champion that and continue to look at how we go forward. Another area that I've pushed to try to innovate and try to accelerate this year, we tried to consolidate some program elements within AFRL. We pushed forward a proposal to go from 13 program elements down to 5 for some of our funding types so that we could move our money to where the best bang for the buck was and try to push some of those. We weren't able to carry that over, but we look forward to continuing our dialogue with Congress and with the folks to see if we can reduce that down so that we have more flexibility and we can accelerate. Things I think that they may not be directly tied to S&T that I think feed into the innovative nature of what we need to do in S&T to get technology out there quicker. Continuing our focus on our digital campaign. That's a great relationship we've got with General Thompson's team, with the AQ team, working across all parts of AFMC so that we have a means to get technology into the field quicker. Couple that with open architectures and modular systems. Those are key things that we can do to invigorate that innovative nature and that we can more rapidly change out technology as technology advances or as the threat changes. The other one we got to look at here, which is probably going to sound a little counterintuitive, we have to continue to emphasize within the research lab and within the S&T community that failure is okay. If everything we're doing within the AFRL is successful and successfully transitions, then quite honestly, we have failed miserably as a research lab. We need to be pushing the edge. We need to be trying some things that don't work. So we have to keep that going up. And last thing for me with this innovative, it's been a focus that Heather unfortunately has heard me say multiple times. We got to have speed with discipline as we go at this. I want to be risk aware as we go forward. I don't want to be risk averse. I want to know what the risks are and I want to go fast, but I want us to think through those things as we go forward. So with that, thanks, Doug.
No, thank you, sir. And General Thompson, let's turn to you. Space is a distinct warfighting domain, and your focus is space acquisition. So how do you accelerate innovation, and particularly for the combatant commanders? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Doug, and thanks to AFA for the invitation to join the panel today. Also, shout out to my fellow panelists here. I mean, when you come to work in the morning and you look at your calendar and you go, hey, I get to hang out on a panel with General Arnie Bunch, General Heather Pringle, and Joel Mozer. It's just a real honor, and you know it's going to be a great day. So thanks to everybody for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the commander of the Space Force's Space and Missile Systems Center out here in sunny El Segundo, California. And I could not agree more with everything that General Bunch said earlier. But let me give you a perspective from the news service and U.S. Spacecom and supporting our joint warfighters on how we're trying to orient our science and technology plus innovation efforts towards getting at new capabilities on orbit as rapidly as possible. We're trying to take a multi-pronged approach by using technologies like digital engineering, which I'm sure we'll talk more about during this panel, and then flexible contracting tools like Section 804 middle tier acquisition and our Space Force Space Enterprise Consortium other transaction agreements, plus things like our space pitch days, which hopefully I'll have the opportunity to address a little bit later. If I kind of take all of those things and package them into one program, a great example of this kind of unified approach on ST&I is the Protected Anti-Jam Tactical SATCOM, or PATS program. That's our next generation tactical SATCOM family of systems meant to provide worldwide, beyond line of sight, anti-jam communications to warfighters in both benign and contested environments. The SMC PATS teams utilizing multiple contracting approaches for different elements of the program so that we can achieve speed and flexibility and put into operations the most innovative approaches as quickly as possible. They've leveraged the Space Enterprise Consortium and Section 804 middle tier acquisition authorities to enable competitive prototyping early in the program. It's a prototyping centric approach that builds out the best solutions while getting capabilities on orbit years ahead of traditional contracting and development timelines. One of the key features of PATS is that it's going to utilize a protected tactical waveform, or PTW. That's an advanced beamforming technology that provides anti-jam capabilities in electromagnetically contested spectrums, right? Last September, SMC participated in the ABMS, Advanced Battle Management System, on-ramp #2 event. In that demo, the PATS team successfully demonstrated the tactical utility of that protected tactical waveform to communicate in the presence of significant jamming. So here we have a program that really showcases a broad spectrum of a lot of the ST&I efforts, like digital engineering, like innovative contracting tools, like reaching to different parts of the industrial base that we haven't reached before, all embedded in this one particular program. Agile acquisition through testing with innovative game-changing technologies, having the operators part of that major demonstration event is really significant and just, like I said, emblematic of what we're trying to do across the space acquisition enterprise to ensure that we're getting stuff out there, as General Bunch said earlier, at the speed of relevance. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. General Pringle, some would say that AFRL is really the propellant for science, technology, and innovation. So from your perspective, how do you accelerate innovation for our Guardians and Airmen?
Well, good morning, General Raaberg, and to the Air Force Association. Thanks for having me on this panel, and it's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here, both with General Bunch as well as General Thompson and Dr. Mozer. I agree, it's a very esteemed group of uber geeks who are interested in science, technology, and innovation. So here at the Air Force Research Lab, we recognize that our first responsibility is to the warfighter and solving the challenges that they face in all domains, not just today, but in the future, in 5 years, 10 years, and beyond. We start by understanding what the warfighter priorities are and scoping out the range of challenges. For example, operations at scale and supporting thousands of kill chains, assessing and sensing on the battlefield under contested conditions, or even delivering logistics under attack. So the building blocks to meet those challenges with science and technology are in place. We have a robust lab structure across the United States and frankly in locations around the world, as General Bunch mentioned. But to accelerate innovation, we are laser focused. AFRL is pursuing 3 lines of effort, the first of which is accelerating the Science and Technology 2030 strategy. This guides how we create solutions, and it emphasizes a few big bet programs to defeat adversary kill chains, but also building a continuous pipeline of science and technology and disruptive innovations based on cutting-edge technologies. And it all drives toward transition momentum. Our second focus is One AFRL supporting 2 services with the stand-up of the United States Space Force, as well as this new commercial interest in the space domain. There are some amazing opportunities to modernize the way that we solve space-related operational problems. And our third priority is leading the best AFRL team. We have to grow the next generation of leaders, as well as the team of uber geeks with a science and technology background to solve the problems that we have today, but also the problems and threats that we will face in the future. And frankly, we only have a guess at what those threats are going to be in the future because we really don't know. And so developing a multidisciplinary, very technically deep team of uber geeks is really important to ensuring that we have the ability to continue to solve problems. So it's an exciting time to be a part of AFRL, and it's very important that we are focused on driving innovation and delivering disruptive technologies to our airmen and our Guardians. Thank you.
Yeah, a perfect segue to Dr. Mozer, especially as the chief scientist for the U.S. Space Force. Along the lines of accelerating innovation, so what are those great promises and great leaps forward that you see for science and technology? Doctor?
Yeah, well, thank you, Doug, and I too appreciate the opportunity to hang out with these guys. I don't know if I'll call you guys uber geeks or not, but I think it's a good way to start. And General Pringle is exactly right. We don't exactly know what the future fight's going to bring, so we need to be prepared for all of that. But you know, as of today, clearly, joint all-domain command and control is important for our present and future effort, and that's going to require a lot of things. It's going to require autonomous agents to collect and analyze and communicate with human operators and commanders across all domains, whether it's air, land, sea, cyber, or space. And this is going to drive a lot of advances in things like artificial intelligence and edge processing, human-machine interactions, in cyber mission assurance. And let me talk about that last one a little bit more, the cyber mission assurance. So this isn't a space unique problem at all, but it's one that space will definitely need to put at the forefront, given how much information we get involved with. You know, future warfare is really going to be much more information centric than past wars, and we're already seeing that. It's one could say we're already at war in this right. So combatants are going to strive to collect and act on as much information as they can as part of the kill chain. All at the same time, they're going to be trying to deny us the ability to do the same. So we have to get in the mode where we're designing our systems to operate in an austere, fog of war, openly hostile cyber environment. And that means really determining upfront what are the critical bits of information that our systems need to be able to communicate and transmit upfront when we're designing those systems, and what are ways to get around any hostile intent, and how do we ensure that information gets to where it needs to go? And this is clearly not the traditional way we design our systems. Currently, we design our systems first to do their mission, and then we figure out how to protect the information by, you know, encrypting it or putting layers of protection on it. We really have to start from the foundation of how we're going to do that. And that's going to drive a lot of new technologies that we need to do, this new paradigm that we need to embrace. And some of those, again, are artificial intelligence, new sensing, computing, and communication architectures, for example, quantum technologies and all of those areas. Physically or mathematically unhackable systems, much different than what we know today. And trusted autonomous systems with potentially lethal capabilities. How do we design for that? How do we get to that trust? And then really developing defensive and offensive tools for information-based warfare. So I think that's where our big leaps and strides are going to come in the near term.
So let me take it to you, General Bunch. We kind of know that size and scale can inhibit innovation. So what, or if any, organizational changes are you considering so that you can ensure really Air Force Materiel Command can really deliver the capability to the warfighter?
Doug, that's a great question, and I got to go to Dr. Mozer first. You could have called me an uber geek. I've been called a lot worse already this morning, so you're not going to hurt my feelings by calling me that. That's a compliment. One of the first things that I would say on org change, and this is going to be, this may not be exactly in line with where you want to go, but it's how I look at it. One of the first things we did was re-emphasize to the airmen and guardians in AFRL that the focus was on, we are in a competition and we've got to act like we're in a competition. While it may not be an organizational change, it's a re-emphasis on the culture that we have to operate with to drive the behaviors that we've got to do our day-to-day activities. Just like I talk about, it's our wartime mission every day, and we've got to inculcate that culture into every aspect of what we do. So to me, I think that was one of the first foundational things that I got the privilege of going down and talking, and the team has really embraced it. I'm really proud of how they've embraced this. So that's number one. Number two, one of the organizational changes that I want to call out is one we didn't do. As we started this, many of the people immediately came out and said we needed to have 2 research labs. And the fact that we didn't do that, I see as a huge success, because one AFRL supporting 2 services is exactly the way that we need to go. Last week, I was at Kirtland and talked to directed energy and space vehicles. This week, I have virtually tried to go to Rome, but weather didn't accommodate. But virtually, I've been at Rome and talking to both. Each had technologies that were going to support the air and the Space Force. No barriers, free flow of information. So to me, that's a huge win. So to me, that's one we didn't do that I'm happy we didn't do because I was against that one from the very beginning. Heather, stand up at the Transformational Capabilities Office. That's been an organizational change that I think has got great merit. That's where we're standing up our Vanguard programs. That's where they're being inculcated and nurtured along. Those we take out of an individual directorate. We get an enterprise focus on those, and we bring in the end user along with the program office, and we develop those so that we can make the transition easier in the future. General Thompson has got one of those is in his portfolio, and I would say they're setting the standard for how we want to bring in the program office and how we want to partner with the end user. I think that is a great example of what we're really doing to try to get the end user early involvement, the program office early involvement. So we're looking at all the illities that we sometimes don't think about, and we're able to get a capability across and get it out to the field in a more timely manner. It's not necessarily a new organizational change, but to stand up the strategic development planning and experimentation organization that's working across the enterprise for prototyping, experiments, and doing a lot of these one-off things to see if we can get if there's really a there. I think that's another one that's really supporting our ability to go with this. I think the move of AFWorks into AFRL has the promise of doing great things to capture what's going on across the innovation ecosystem and pull that in, tie that in with what we do within AFMC with sustainment, test, acquisition, and the research lab and all those things, and do the same with Lieutenant General Thompson. I think that shows great promise there. That's another organizational change that occurred. And then while it's not an organizational change, I talked about a little bit earlier, the way that we're attacking the digital enterprise with a campaign that goes across the life cycle of the platform, focused on what we're doing in acquisition and how we're going to do our future work there, and having the partnership with the Space and Missile Systems Center and working that with the U.S. Space Force to make sure there's no gap between what we're doing going forward, that what we're looking at doing to create the digital tools, own the tech baseline, agile, secure DevOps, open architectures, we're perfectly aligned to go forward. Those are all things that I think we're really moving out in the right way, Doug.
Sir, what I hear from you is unity of effort is really paying big dividends, and that sounds terrific. General Thompson, let me kind of throw it over to you. You know, they always say often big ideas is not the problem, and you've spoken about this a lot, and that is that valley of death. Somewhere between the concept and finally delivering the goods. So, sir, would you address that for us?
Yeah, sure thing, Doug. If I can just get over being referred to 1 minute as an Uber geek, and then the very next minute having it torn away from me as if I'm not an Uber geek. I'll just remind everybody, all the panelists, that there's 2 people on this panel that have PhDs, and there's 2 people that don't. The 2 people that don't outrank the 2 people that do. And so we would appreciate it, General Bunch and I, if you would just refer to us as maybe pseudo geeks or something, right? In any case, we'll have a private conversation after the panel is over, and we'll straighten this all out on who is an Uber geek and who is not. In any case, back to your question, Doug, you know, that crossing the valley of death has been a challenge to the acquisition community for years, and particularly in the space domain, as hundreds of new space startups have come online over the last few years, we really needed to build a robust innovation ecosystem, if you will, to get after it. And I think the key factor for crossing that valley of death, it's really just all about partnership. So a great example is how closely we're working with our partners in General Pringle's organization, AFRL, and Lieutenant General Stephen Whiting's organization, the Space Operations Command, to bridge that valley of death by leveraging all of our organization's unique capabilities and roles in the acquisition process. Having the technologist be closely connected to the acquirer, who is also closely connected to the operator, is paramount. So in collaboration with AFRL, we're obviously utilizing a lot of tech accelerators to discover new solutions and startups to some of our unique space domain problems, helping them get funding through things like our Space Force Pitch Day events and the new AFWorks West unit stood up last December called SpaceWorks that we established here in LA. As we discover new solutions or game changers potentially from industry, we're also working with our space operators to find user communities that could benefit from those technologies. A great example of that is next month, General Whiting and the Space Operations Command will host myself or my team, the SMC team, and AFRL in what's called a Delta Innovation Summit, where we're going to get after how we innovate and then get that innovation into the warfighter's hands a lot more quickly. The model that we're approaching really ensures that a startup or a small business that wins a contract during a Space Pitch Day event has an actual operator base ready to partner with and ensure the utility and suitability of that technology. One of the great examples from our Space Pitch Day in November of 19 of that, I guess, pipeline in action is the Genesis program. Genesis is a tool built by a small business called Northstrat. That tool was designed to solve a particularly difficult satellite communications resource management challenge. The Northstrat folks came in and pitched their Genesis tool during our Space Pitch Day event. They were selected as one of the 30 winners. Following the pitch day, we assigned an SMC program manager to the Genesis program who facilitated coordination between Northstrat programmers and our military satellite communication operators. That partnership resulted in an incredibly successful program where Genesis, just as a phase 2 SBIR, has proven its worth and transformed a legacy system. That legacy scheduling system, that resource management system that we got after, used to be 10 different spreadsheets with 33 different tabs populated manually in a process that took a space operator 4+ hours to accomplish. The new process using the Genesis tool takes about 15 minutes total. That is innovation at the speed of relevance at the pointy end of the spear. And that's just one way of one example of the ways that we're helping shepherd new technologies from discovery through development and into the hands of operators as quickly as possible. As a final note, I'll just say that stand by. We have another Space Pitch Day event coming up later this year, and we're really looking forward to seeing the process mature and some of the new technologies that we'll get after at that event. Thanks, Doug.
Sure, I think that's really promising how you're embracing small to medium businesses engaging in that arena. General Pringle, your #1 priority, Science and Technology Strategy 2030. Open up the flaps for us and tell us how that really helps accelerate innovation, and how's it going this year?
So the 2030 strategy is really our guidepost. So I'm glad you're asking about it. And it takes two approaches to accelerating change. So the first one is really a top-down driven process where it starts with the threat and a strategy and the design, and then wrapping around the science and technology capabilities to fulfill those strategic initiatives. And our goal is to achieve or dedicate up to 20% of our investments to this portfolio, this transformational top-down strategy-driven design by FY23. The second part of this Science and Technology 2030 strategy is to take a bottom-up approach through a continuous pipeline of science and technology, because even the transformational capabilities that I mentioned earlier, it still requires a lot of components and basic science and technology enablers. For example, a machine learning capability still requires data analytics, predictive modeling, and integrative architectures. So we are dedicating 80% of our portfolio to these building blocks of science and technology. So really looking into the next year, we want to keep this transformational technology on a fast track. And as General Bunch mentioned, we either want to succeed or fail fast and get out of that business. It's important to identify how these transformational capabilities and this program is different from the 80% science and technology that we are pursuing. In the first place, we have much broader stakeholder engagement. The Vanguard programs themselves, they involve acquisition partners, our PEO partners, major commands and field commands every step of the way to ensure success. And ultimately, the focus of a Vanguard program is the warfighter and getting to a transition on a quick timeline. So right now we have 3 Vanguard programs, and I look forward to keeping this pipeline moving and energized with a steady flow of Vanguards coming and going. The 3 Vanguards that we have is a Navigation Technology Satellite 3, which is a alternative position navigation and timing capability. Second Vanguard program that we have is Skyborg, which is developing a family of autonomous capabilities on affordable platforms so that we can generate some low-cost combat mass. And then our third Vanguard is the Golden Horde program, which is a collaborative munitions approach to overcome adversary defenses. At any given time in the coming years or in the future, we could have 3 to 6 Vanguards. And so I'm really looking forward to the time where we have the pipeline greased so that we can add new Vanguards, or that we get to the point where we have failed fast or graduated some of the other ones. On the Skyborg program, for example, in the coming year, we're going to take some progressive steps in the crawl stage. We're not in the walk or run stage of this program. And the Skyborg capability isn't going to be a weapons school graduate wingman anytime soon, but we are looking to take the components of the autonomy, fly it in some very rigorous test capabilities, such as the orange flag flights coming up this summer, and then look to slowly add capabilities, measure, learn from our successes, and then keep the program going. On the Golden Horde program, for example, just last week, we took the next step from looking at 2 collaborative munitions to 4 collaborative munitions that successfully hit 4 separate targets all at the same time. This was a great step forward in this program, but moving ahead, what we are looking to do is beginning a phase of an open collaborative autonomy architecture. And this government-owned reference architecture is really going to be an environment where more players can come and compete their own versions of what autonomous collaborative weapons should be. And so there's a lot of excitement about where this program is going. So ultimately in the coming year, I really want to fully implement the 2030 strategy because it's helping us grow and mature these capabilities for warfighters. I want to set conditions so that we have a steady stream of Vanguard programs, as well as ideas and concepts, as well as the building blocks from science and technology all across the lab. As General Bunch mentioned, we want to link our investments to these transformational capabilities and accelerating funding to this portfolio by FY23. And then lastly, improving our stakeholder involvement and buy-in, both with MAJCOMs and field commands.
Well, it appears the Vanguards are on an incredible accelerated trajectory with the enterprise efforts. So thank you, General Pringle. Dr. Mozer, I honestly saved the hardest question for you. Yesterday, the Senate Armed Services Committee met and essentially had a conversation about science, technology, and innovation. And one of the key elements was essentially what I'm going to ask you, and that is, how do you secure these innovations? Obviously, there's a competitive environment where the adversary is equally innovating rapidly. So how do you get ahead of the leap and get ahead of the other guy?
Yeah, thank you, Doug. And first, let me address the super geek issue. I won't rest until every member of the Space Force, every Guardian, is an uber geek. That's where we're headed. So good stuff. And there, on the how to secure innovation, there's really only one way to secure innovation, and that's to innovate faster and deeper than the adversary. So let me talk about that just a second. So we all know that the rate of change of technology is ever increasing. It's relentless. And we also know at the same time, technology spreads globally faster than ever before. So these two factors together lead directly to the situation that any S&T advantage that we are able to eke out is going to be increasingly short-lived. So the only S&T strategy that really can work in this scenario is to constantly innovate and stay ahead of the curve. There's really no resting in this regard, whether it's peacetime or wartime. So not only do our innovations need to come more rapidly, they do need to be more deep. And what I mean by that is that they need to regularly change the game. And by doing that, we provide deterrence to our adversaries as well as technology surprise, and hopefully avoid surprise from them. So how do we do this? Well, one thing is all the things we've talked about before following the S&T 2030 strategy. I think we need to increase our investment in S&T in order to prepare for this. And an important point that I'd like to make, and it seems a little contrary, but one thing that we have to do if we want to be more agile, more fast, is we have to have an increasingly long-term perspective. So if you want to go fast today, you have to have looked out further and anticipated the environments that you're going to be fighting in the future, including the capabilities and the threats and the weaknesses of all sides of a future engagement. So a little bit counterintuitive, but looking out far is how we go faster today and how we maintain that advantage. Thanks.
Thank you. We have less than 10 minutes. General Bunch, let me go back to General Pringle's perspective on S&T strategy. So what improvements from the 4-star level have you seen in your command?
So, Doug, great question. I'm very proud of how Heather and her team have embraced this and went out and tackled what we gave them to do in S&T 2030. We've had a senior executive service or a senior leader lead on this from the very beginning, and I've been getting regular updates. Started under General Cooley, now General Pringle's carrying that forward, and the team has just embraced it, and they've really moved out. Couple things that we really focused on, and one of those Dr. Mozer talked about the long-term goal there of looking out in the distance. For us, in a lot of ways, that falls to Dr. Welsh at AFOSR. And she has come in and really energized the organization. One of the challenges that I sort of optionally mandatory gave her was go look at building the partnerships and increasing the number of partnerships and the relationships with academia and with industry and with our international partners. And she is off and running. She's really done a great job. That's one that I already see as a benefit that we're getting out of this moving forward. I think another one that has really improved is we've got a much tighter relationship with AFWIC than we had. And so I'm happy with that as we look at where we're going for the future. And we've got a great relationship with General Kreider and the Space Force as we're moving forward. And I think that close linkage with AFRL, I think that's only gotten stronger because of how we've tried to implement. I've already talked a little bit about the stand-up of the Transformational Capabilities Office. I think that's a win. I think that's really going to pay us great dividends in the future as we move forward and we look at where we're trying to go. Heather has moved out on what we call War Tech, which is trying to get inputs from the field on things that we need to be looking at. One of the things when I first got in the job, I actually into this role, I asked the team to go look at what is our field experience within the research lab. over the years, that has dramatically increased. The reason it's dramatically increased is the demand signal in the field has gone up, and we've had less opportunities to bring operators in the field into our program offices and into the research lab. So Heather's trying to build that relationship to see what they need and draw that expertise in at the right places. So I'm really happy with that. She's also created an Air Force Explorer, which is an external pool of ideas in for things that we can go get at. And I think that's really good. The other one that will sound probably may sound counterintuitive to some of the folks is Seedlings Call for Disruptive Technologies. What that actually does is goes out into the AFRL organizations and looks at what are those technologies that they think can be disruptive in space or in air, and see what those are. Sometimes as operators, we become limited with our thought based on what our experiences are, and we're not willing to open the aperture up to what some of these innovative airmen and technologists can think about the art of the possible, and they look at things in a different way, and we want to explore what those are to see if there's a there, and maybe it goes beyond what the field thinks they can do, and they may have an idea that can come in. You know, we have oftentimes within the research lab, I know we did it when I was a director within the research lab, developed technologies the field didn't think they needed. We put them on the shelf, and then we go back a few years later and pull them off the shelf and reinvigorate them because the need is there. So we're trying to get at that earlier. Partnerships, I talked about that. We're up over 6,000 plus now within AFRL. Out of the book, one of the books that I've read about leadership, none of us is as smart as all of us. This has got to be a partnership, pulling ideas in to figure out what we need to go forward. And I think that's the key reason with the partnership. The last one that I don't believe we've talked about enough in this group is we have to continue to focus on the foundation, and that foundation are our airmen and our guardians. All the rest of this doesn't work if we don't have the right airmen and guardians that are working this. So if we don't set that foundation right, which is one of the other areas that Heather is focused on now, and driving what we got to do to develop, recruit, retain the right airmen and guardians to work within the S&T enterprise, we've got to keep our focus there, or a lot of these other things are not really going to matter. So we're doing great things, Doug.
Thank you, sir. We've got about 3 minutes remaining, so I'd like to just wrap up with a final thought from each of you. I'd like to start with you, General Thompson, and 30 seconds. What is your final thought for our audience?
Yeah, so to General Bunch's point that he just concluded with, the fact that our airmen and guardians need to have solid foundations in science, technology, and innovation, bringing into both services the right kinds of people to do the important work of developing new capabilities for our warfighters is really, really important. We all joked earlier about uber geeks and pseudo geeks and super geeks. It's a serious conversation in that our guardians and our airmen need to have the foundation of capability so that they understand STEM and can understand how we can transition science, technology, and innovative new game changers into the force more rapidly than our adversaries and more beneficial to our warfighters. I think that was a great point and something that we should slam dunk here at the end of the panel. Thanks very much, Doug, and appreciate you and all my fellow panelists in this event. Over.
Thank you, sir. Briefly, General Pringle, last thought, 30 seconds.
Thank you for this opportunity. I agree with my fellow senior Uber geeks that it takes a team to deliver these complex capabilities to our warfighters, transitioning from a concept on a napkin to a fielded capability. Acquisition, science and technology, warfighters, industry and academia, and we're on a journey, and it's going to take continued effort and to set the pace for innovation. Thank you.
Dr. Mozer, burst transmission, go ahead.
All right, just wanted to point out that another U.S. government organization earlier this week took a very advanced machine with tons of advanced sensors to a distant hostile place without real-time communication or PNT infrastructure. They put their package right on target using automated decision-making and terrain relative navigation. These are exactly the technologies that we will need to fight wars in the future, and we need to pay attention to what's going on with NASA and the rover. And oh, by the way, China did very similar things on the backside of the moon not too long ago, where they returned samples from the moon. So this is not a unique capability. We have to keep innovating and stay ahead of this curve.
Well, thank you. This has been an absolutely wonderful panel. When we return, Tobias and Amy will break down the panel we just heard. Thank you.